20 minutes on a subject that I think can be covered very nicely in 20 minutes. Live connected tables, relatively new feature in Power BI. What are we going to do? We're going to talk about how to get data from Power BI into Excel, how to create a live connected table. There are several ways, how to edit things when you've got there, and other stuff you can do, and general benefits. First of all, there is an old joke that I've told many times at SQL Bits, but like all old jokes, we're going to tell it again. What is the number one feature in every BI tool? You've heard it before. It's funny because it's true. It's not even a joke. It's just one of those sad truisms. However great your report, somebody wants to get that data into Excel. What's the problem with export to Excel? Well, guess what? Once somebody has manually exported the data into Excel to build their Excel-based analysis chain, they have to carry on doing it every day for the rest of their life. And if they fall under a bus, guess what? The whole thing collapses. You see these stories in the press every day. There was one about, was it some Formula One team who discovered that their entire Formula One racing car parts system was based on Excel, and it was causing them massive problems. So obviously we don't want people to export to Excel because it's a manual, horrible, broken process, and obviously people always want to do it. It's the number one thing they want to do. So how can we get away from that with Power BI? Well, we can let people export to Excel with a twist. Let's have a look at a Power BI report. It's ugly, I know, but it doesn't really matter whether it's ugly or not. And let's have a look at this table. This is an interesting looking table, and I'm a business user and I want to get that data into Excel. What are the options? Well, if I click on here and click on Export Data, I've got three options. I can export the data with the current layout. And as you can see from the grayed out drop-down box there is a limit of 150,000 rows. So if we click this and export, it's going to generate an Excel file. We'll just save that, and we will open it. And what have we got when it opens? There we go. We've got the data that was in that visual. But it's just that data on an Excel sheet. So yes, if we carry on doing this and the data's changed, well, somebody's got to click export every day. That's not very nice. So we don't want to do that. There's another option. So if we go to export, we could go to underlying data. Again, there's a limit there of 150,000 rows. So we could click export. And rather than export the data that's actually there in the visual, it will export all the data from the underlying rows in the table. And so instead of 6 rows or something, we've got lots and lots and lots of rows of data. But again, this is just data on a worksheet. It's static. We don't want people to do this. So we go back here and we have a look at the third option, the one in the middle. It's summarized data, but what's the thing that's going to really excite me about this as a business user? Not the fact that it's a live connected table. It's like, oh, it's 500,000 rows instead of 150,000 rows. Now, that's got to be better. So obviously, we're going to choose that. There are some other options here. I could export to 150,000 rows or a CSV file with 30,000 rows, but this is a no-brainer. 500,000 rows, yes, we absolutely want to do that. We've done a very clever trick here on the business users. We've said, oh, if you want to export and get the most data, use this option. But of course, there are other benefits for us as Power BI report writers. So I'm going to choose this option, Excel with live connection, and click export. And we'll save this and then open it. Now, where's my data? Well, I've just downloaded it, and it's in protected view, so we're going to enable editing. It's going to ask me to sign in, which is important. Why is it important? Because there is my data, but this is not just data on a worksheet. This is a table which is live connected back to my Power BI semantic model, which means that when the data in my semantic model changes and Excel reopens or refreshes this table, it will rerun that same DAX query that was used to populate the visual to get the data into this table in Excel. This is a live connected table. Now, the benefit for the business user is 500,000 rows. But then, of course, they will realize, oh, hold on, I don't need to keep re-exporting every day. I just reopen this same Excel file, and every day when I open it, it's got the fresh new data in. So we've got that export to Excel functionality, but we've solved the problem of manual refreshes and everything like that. So we've got a live connected table, better for the business user and better for you. So this is the main way that you can create a live connected table. There are other ways as well. If I was to go to my semantic model and have a look at the kind of semantic model data hub page here, I've got a list of tables here on the right-hand side that are in my semantic model. I could click on property type, and I can actually go to create a paginated report from this. I can show the DAX query that's generated this here, but I've also got this option to export and then export to Excel, and here export with a live connection. So I could export a live connected table containing all of the data in that table down to here. We open that up. And again, connect to authenticate, because it needs to authenticate because I'm running a query here. And there's my table here as well. I've also got another option for creating a live connected table. Let's get rid of that. So here I am in a brand new Excel file that I opened. I didn't do any exporting, but I can also create a live connected table from here, because I can go to get data from Power Platform from Power BI. You might be aware that this is a way to create pivot tables if you've used pivot tables with Analyze in Excel. Sometimes when you've got lots and lots of semantic models in your tenant, this can take quite a long time. So I've already done it and opened up my list of data sets here. I'm going to search, and there is my, they need to update this. There should be semantic models here. There's my semantic model that I was just working with, and I've got the option to create a pivot table, but now I have got an option to insert a table, a live connected table starting in Excel. So if I go to insert table here, we've got something interesting here. We've got a query builder. So here, for example, I could say, let's get data from our property type table, and let's maybe get count of sales and average price paid, and expand that. Let's bring month in. We can add month down to here, and we can move that up, and it will generate the DAX query for me. I could even apply a filter, and I could say, let's only get data for the month of January. There we go. And I've got a nice DAX query builder here, building my query. And again, I can click Insert Table, and it's going to insert my live connected table here into Excel. Time for some bad news. We've just seen this nice query builder here that used to build our query. What happens if I want to edit the query? I can't get back to the query builder, or at least not yet. Ideas.powerbi.com. If you want to be able to get back to the query builder, it would be nice to do, but it's all right, because if we right-click on the table and go to the table option, Rather weirdly, the Edit DAX option is grayed out, and that's not the one that we want to use to see the DAX that's populating the table. There is an Edit Query option here. So I'm going to right-click Table, Edit Query, and there is my DAX query that I've used here. So if I click OK and copy this, and let's go to DAX Studio, I'm going to connect through the XMLA endpoint to the semantic model that I was just connected to there. Let's format this query. We can see the query that's being generated. It's going to connect in a moment, I hope. Come on, come on, come on. There we are. All right. So there's my semantic model in DAX Studio. I can, of course, run my query. As a business user, I was very frustrated with that 500,000 row limit. Wouldn't it be great if I could go to 1,000,000 rows? Well, how have we implemented that 500,000 row limit? Top N. All right, don't tell your users this bit. All right, you could edit this. You could also just do whatever you want. DAX Studio has got a really nice query builder in it as well. So I could get something completely different. Let's get county and new and count of sales, or what were the things that I need to get on here? Got to get it right, because yes, I've got everything right, everything that I need. And I can go to update, generate a completely new DAX query, run this here. That's good for me. And then I can take this and I can simply delete everything in this little box, replace it with a DAX query that I generated in DAX Studio, click OK, and there we go. There's my other DAX query loaded into Excel table. And of course, not only will this refresh when I open the query, open the Excel, I can manually refresh it here by just clicking refresh, and bingo, it's refreshed that query. I can also go to queries and connections, and if we have a look at the connection and go to properties, there are some interesting properties that I've got here. I can say let's refresh every minute, make sure it refreshes when I'm opening the file. I can say let's refresh this connection when I click the refresh all button. I've also got on here a little button that allows me to export the connection file, because that DAX query is embedded in the connection, which means that if I export the connection file and let's just save it to, I don't know, my downloads folder, and let's do that and replace that. It's going to create a .odc file. And now if I go to my downloads folder, there's the ODC file that I just exported from Excel. And if you're really good at Excel, you'll know what happens when you open an ODC file. You click and open it. Oh, all right, cancel that. It's going to open up a brand new instance of Excel and run my query and put it in the table. So you can export this connection, hand it around to your users. They will open it. Are they going to be able to run queries? No, only if they've got access to the semantic model that this is connected to. But if they have, well, there's their Excel table. So that's pretty cool. So what have we seen? We've seen the ability to export data as a live connected table, and it still stays connected back up to the semantic model, and it refreshes, which is good. But if you really know Power BI, you will say, well, I could do that already. You know, that's been around for ages. I could create pivot tables. I could create XLQ functions. I could have used Power Query as well to do this. What is so special about this? Well, I would say there are two main benefits to the way we do things here. Obviously, there are disadvantages with the lack of being able to edit the query, but there are two main benefits. First of all, we're getting data as a table. Now, if you've worked with pivot tables of any kind, let alone pivot tables connected to Power BI semantic models, you will know that getting data out of a pivot table is actually a real pain. There's a get pivot data function, which is all fiddly and nasty how to use. If you are getting data out of cube functions, you can get data using cube functions and get something in a table-like form, but cube functions can be quite slow and quite fiddly. A table is actually the ideal format for a lot of people working with Excel, because you can do your X lookups and your V lookups and whatever else you want. And what's more, you've got the ability to use all of those cool new dynamic array formulas that you might have heard about. So let's grab a couple of dynamic array formulas and see what we could do with this. Let's copy this. Now, my dynamic array formulas are expecting this table to be called table 1, so I'm just going to rename that to be table 1. But if I paste a dynamic array formula into here using the brand new pivot by function, look, I can take my table which has got count is and a yn column on rows, and I've pivoted it up to make it look like that. That, I think, is pretty cool. And I could also say, use the filter function instead to, we go back up to here. Let's filter the table and only get the rows where count of sales is greater than 100. There we go. I've only got the rows here where count of sales is greater than 100. So it's just much, much easier to get my data in table form for all of the other things that I want to do afterwards in Excel. There is another benefit as well. Pivot tables, cube functions generate MDX queries in the background. You're using Power Query to get data by default, unless you're specifying your own native written DAX query. Power Query's own UI will generate MDX against tabular models, which includes Power BI semantic models. MDX queries naturally perform worse than DAX queries. I won't go into why, but they do. There are all kinds of, obscure issues with how the query plans are generated. There's also another kind of hidden issue, which, spoiler, we are working on fixing with Excel pivot tables, where even if you don't think you're returning subtotals, it will sometimes return subtotals, and that can really slow things down. So pivot tables against semantic models are slow for a variety of reasons. DAX queries here, especially if you happen to be a kind of Marco Russo type who can write super advanced DAX on your own, are just going to be a lot faster. You can see that even just returning that data, it was instant. It was a couple of hundred milliseconds to get my data into Excel. So your queries are going to be faster as a result. And that takes us nicely up to the 20-minute mark. We've got 2 minutes for any questions that anybody wants to ask. So the question is, will we ever have pivot tables generating DAX? That's not even the first time somebody's asked me that question today. I would love that to happen. There are vague flickers of interest from the Excel team, so who knows, it might happen in the future. It would make a lot of sense, but it would be a ton of work for us to do. So I don't want to get your hopes up, but you never know, it might well happen. So the question is there any chance of supporting dynamic format strings in these tables? Definitely not in these tables, because they are completely unaware of any kind of formatting. Pivot tables, I do not know. I'm not sure. So actually, you can have the last question. So the question is, could I have a snapshot point in time? Yes, you can turn off refresh if you want. You could manually copy and paste the data onto another sheet. You could indeed use Power Query, I suppose, to kind of copy and paste the data onto another sheet as well. All right, we're out of time. Thank you very much. Please go to the feedback link and tell me what you thought. Thank you.